As I had earlier on said, we will be talking about the Finance Bill 2022. And in studio with me is Noah Ndakala, who is the managing partner at Ronald's LLP. Thank you for joining us and for giving us your insights regarding this Finance Bill 2022.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we can start from when you read that finance bill, what were your valuable highlights and what can you pick from this Finance Bill 2022?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline, and good morning. This is a good opportunity for me just to say a few things, and maybe before I go to the nitty-gritties of the bill, I just want to make a little comment on the fuel, the ongoing crisis, the ongoing fuel crisis. I think it's one of those saddest moments, especially that this country primarily runs on fuel. So there's almost a stalemate. If you go around, there's a lot of traffic around petrol stations, and I think if you look at the investment in terms of the resource wastage, people just queuing for fuel, traffic, and lost man hours is quite a deplorable state. And we hope that the government can address this in the shortest time possible. It is even worse up country because, again, the local economies run on fuel. You are talking of people traveling from point A to B. So the urbanites are a bit okay, but if you go to the villages, it's not good. So we hope that the government can rein in and address the issues. Of course, we know there could be issues on fuel hoarding from the marketers. There's issues of complaining about the subsidies. Yeah, but what I would want to urge people is just be patient and hope something will happen and we'll be back to the normal state, because there's just so much fuel that can even fill a car. So whether you are going to the petrol station, you are not assured because, again, you'll still have to refuel the car. So let's everybody just be patient and use whatever resources that we have so that we can keep this economy running. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now coming back to the Finance Bill 2022, just break it down for us. What are your thoughts in regards to this bill?
Yeah, thank you very much, Caroline. Yeah, I think the Finance Bill 2022 is basically a government tool that they are using in order to be able to fund the activities of the nation, and they do that through the bill. So these are proposals that are supposed to be deliberated on in Parliament, and once passed, they will find their space in the Finance Act. Yeah, but largely a lot of those proposals could be passed. But if you look at the changes that have been proposed in those within the Finance Bill, they are mainly anchored on the agenda, specifically based on the agenda for this budget for economic acceleration, and just trying to finalize on the president's agenda of the Big Four. And it looks like this is a legacy budget, so the president is also vulnerable to just ensure that as he exits office, he leaves something for Kenyans. Yes, I would say he has done great. The second term of President Uhuru and even the first term was dealt with a lot of challenges. We are coming from and haven't recovered from COVID pandemic. We are also still in the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. There are issues of devolved governments that, again, are forming a critical mass of those budgets, and also just to finance education. So if you look even at the budget allocation, the resources are allocated specifically to be able to meet the initiatives within the Big Four agenda, but again to also finance what we call the economic stimulus program. And this is part 3 of the same, which is supposed to just ensure that the government is also able to give back and motivate the citizens into giving them some reprieve and reliefs, specifically on the youth, women, and also the issues of small and medium enterprises, the SMEs, and also the issues of affordable housing and also affordable universal health care. Yeah, so if you look at the proposal that have been made, largely we are talking about the changes within the VAT Act. We also have changes within the customs and excise. We have also changes within the income tax and also the other miscellaneous amendments that have been proposed. And also we have issues that are supposed to aid in the tax administration to ensure that, again, we have sound policies to be able to also manage and collect the revenue based on the target that have been set. Yeah, so a lot of the proposal, I could say, this more of a continuation because I cannot see major changes. But again, I would say the expectations of the normal mwananchi have not been met because we are still faced with the issues of the rising cost of living. The food prices have gone up. The issues of unemployment is still a problem in this country, and also just the issues of security and other issues that border on the normal mwananchi. So I would have expected a lot of reprieves, but that is not what I see, except for the fact that there were no changes on excise on fuel. Although you have seen the prices of fuel have gone up even without imposing additional taxation. So again, there are issues of inflationary and all those. They are still affecting us even without having to propose additional taxation on fuel.
Yes, as you have said about the Kenyans decrying the high cost of living, the escalating food prices, and yet here we have a Finance Bill 2022 that is proposing to remove VAT, or rather to add a 16% VAT on wheat and maize flour. How is this going to affect the common Kenyan down there at the grassroots?
Yeah, we are going to be faced with the increased cost of living because these costs are going to be then be passed to the final consumer. So the VAT on main foodstuffs that the consumer needs on a daily basis, these are basic needs that we cannot do it. So it's quite a misnomer to see that the government is almost at a very hard place, that they look that they do not have options, and the only option is to really tax people on consumption, and that's not a very good way to go. So it has a ripple effect even in terms of disposable income. We are saying that these taxes are being raised when we are faced with an economic crunch, that the economy is not doing as well based on the increase in food prices. So this will really affect even ability of the normal mwananchi to spend. And unless there is something that can happen drastically, we will be faced with a crisis, specifically that we are now going into an election period where the costs are going to really be high on us, and the expenditure from the government side is going also not to really focus on the normal mwananchi.
Would you say inflation and taxation pose a threat to human survival?
Yeah, those two things are quite a misnomer because they are within the fiscal policy. Because when you are faced with inflation, then you are talking of increased food prices, because then the value of money is depleting. We are also saying that, again, because of the increased cost of living, even businesses have problems just meeting their normal operating expenditure. And usually what happens is that you are going to see massive termination, or what we call unemployment, and those people are going to have to be retrenched. because usually when businesses are not doing well, the very first thing to do is to start cutting costs on employees. And then we are going to be faced again with the issues of unemployment. And when you bring in the issues of taxation, they even compound the problem and it makes it quite difficult. So we need a very good tax-efficient policy in this country that can be able to address the issues of taxation. And again, we need a very good policy to ensure that we are able to contain inflation and ensure that the food prices are not adversely affected, because they are going to touch on the very basic person. They are the grassroots.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were like the CS for Treasury, and given that you have to raise about 50.4 billion shillings to finance a 3.3 trillion budget, which areas would you have targeted before we delve deeper into some of the areas that have the CS has said that they will ensure that these areas get the necessary revenue to finance this budget?
I would simply go to the very basic tenets of taxation, and a tax system must be able to give comfort to the taxpayers, in the sense that I would do the basics of just like expanding the tax base, where we have more people paying taxes as opposed to just a few individuals. And there are so many businesses that have capacity to pay tax, even within the Juakali and the informal sector. But then how can a system of taxation allow them to pay tax in a very simple way, so that the tax is certain, and yet even the cost of compliance, even to those Juakali artisans, is so simple and not retributive? That's what I will do. I'll encourage the expansion of the tax base, so that we have more people paying tax. But again, I will also ensure that the people who are making more income are able to pay a little bit more, as opposed to those who are not earning more income. And I will also ensure that I give reliefs to the low-income earners, because then they are left with a good disposable income, because these are the people then who run this economy. Every day they are the ones who are spending the money, and that expenditure, the expenditure that is within the many masses, this is what is then running this economy. Because then we are saying we are leaving them with some good money that they are then able to go and buy and just be able to then afford. Even those people who are in business, manufacturing, production, their goods are able then to be bought, and then you shift the tax to businesses that are making profits, rather than trying to really be very ruthless with the Wanjiku. Yeah.
Okay. Now, delving deeper now into the finance bill, the finance bill proposes to reinstate excise tax on betting to 20% from the current 7.5%. This is after a push and pull of two financial years ago. How will this have, what effect will this have on the industry?
Yeah, I think we'll see the same effect that it had, where you had all these betting firms getting out of the market and having a stalemate within that. You expect again a lot of antagonism in terms of just this country becoming unpreferred for investments. And we will lack what we call the foreign direct investments, which we need to spiral this economy. As much as we are saying this is a sin tax, meaning that they are taxing for the adverse effects for businesses within that sector. But it will also be important to see also, even as they introduce those taxes in those specified industries, what incentives are also available, so that also there's a balancing act. We try to leverage and balance out the issues of revenue collection, and also enabling businesses, especially in the new emerging industries, Yeah.
Okay. And will the government plans to also amend taxes on key products, including motorbikes, and also make it mandatory for riders to pay third-party insurance policy? I'd like to know how possible this is from your end.
Yeah, and again, I will say it is a wrong move because that is what I would call a knee-jerk reaction, because it's sort of like trying to not provide a cure, but then you are reacting because I think we all know that the borders employ massive Kenyans, and some of the people who are operating those borders are people with families, and to start to really be punitive to them just because of a few isolated instances is something that may not really augur well. They may have a difficulty in implementing that. What I would recommend is we need to have a regulation that really punishes the offenders rather than to penalize the entire industry, because then it's going to crumble. These are initiatives that also is similar to the introduction of minimum tax that was fought and it was not implemented, because then you are trying to introduce something that is much more anchored on collecting revenues and making very difficult for border operators and other businesses to operate. Because if you are going to say, let them have comprehensive insurance, there are also other, even, for example, like the public operators. Some of them are on third party only, the matatus. What is going to happen? Are we going also to bring them into that, the same net? What is going to happen? How is the industry going to respond? These are services that really every single one of us rely on, and is going to cause a stalemate. And these are some of the things that then become very difficult to the normal mwananchi, because something is introduced, yes, but then the effect to the normal citizen is quite impactful. And I think it's something to think about. I doubt that proposal will go through. I'm really waiting to see what our MPs will be passing in Parliament. I doubt, especially in an election year, again, when a lot of people within that industry are also the voters, I do not see it passing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, coming back to our conversation this morning in regards to the Finance Bill 2022, and picking up from where we left off, we were talking about the introduction of the 25% excise duty on all imported potatoes, including the pre-blanched, blast frozen, in the Finance Bill. What kind of effect are we likely to see in this excise on the industry?
Yeah, you are looking at, of course, potatoes and all those things that are being imported. There are major inputs in, for example, hotels. So you expect that the food prices from those will go up. But again, I see a good move, maybe in the long run, because then it is time to then think of how can we incentivize the potato and other farmers, so that then we are able to get the local produce to our own market, so that we are not relying on imports, and specifically those that are agriculture-based. And government has a massive blueprint on how to really just sprout up the agricultural sector. But I think what we are lacking is a very clear policy in terms of how do we ensure then that you are able to incentivize the local farmers, and you are able to, now we are talking of things like subsidies. How are you able to subsidize? I have seen that in the budget, where there's massive subsidy on fertilizer and other farming inputs. And I think that's what we need to delve into, so that we are not really dependent on imports, because that is really killing our economy. And we have resources, we have land. Farming is one of the major economic earners that this country can ever leverage on. So we need to set up policies that then incentivize the local farmers, and not just in potato, even in tea and every other sector, coffee, to ensure that then we really encourage our farmers to be able to reap maximally from what they are doing. Of course, I have seen also other also incentives, other than just saying, okay, they are retributive in terms of excise duty. I have seen there are also exemptions on other very important, like if you go into the healthcare, the drugs have also been exempted from the 25% excise duty. We are also seeing that the locally assembled vehicles are being exempted from not just excise, but also VAT. So what is the silver lining within that? That's what then we need to, because when you're looking at the passenger vehicles, we are using quite a number of passenger vehicles in this country. How can we incentivize so that even we stop importing the passenger vehicles and just encourage the local manufacturers? And this is where you are going to have a ripple effect in terms of employment creation for the youth, innovation, and then this country will really be able to not to worry with these retributive measures, but then we'll be able to generate income locally. A very maybe key issue in terms of excise, I've seen the CS through this bill is proposing to allow the commissioner to decide imposition of excise on specified products, and they have been left at the discretion of the commissioner. And I think that is where you might find other additional legislation that then expose us to additional taxation. And the Excise Act is one of the very robust. If you look at that act itself, it has so many numerous products, and we are talking about different tariffs. And there's always leverage and also discretion to the commissioner to really just be able to vary, and that's where now I see there is high drive to really get into excessive taxation. So I think those are some of the things that the legislators need to focus on, so that we have what we would later call in a very clear national tax policy that can be able to predict how are we going to be taxing our citizens, so that we are not every time looking forward to all these robust changes, and some of them really become very punitive, and some of them cannot be implemented. Yeah, so I hope that can be achieved. I wanted to say a few things on VAT, because we see also a lot of reprieve in terms of VAT. They are not so much, but majorly in terms of incentivizing the manufacturing sector, where we are saying all the equipment that are coming in for manufacturing, we see reprieve on exemption on VAT. We see a lot of exemptions within also the VAT for pharmaceutical manufacturers. We see exemption of inputs on all supplies to pharmaceuticals, and also we are also seeing that to medical facilities. So I think we need to look at that and be able to see how can businesses benefit from these incentives, how can also we really ensure that government is accountable in terms of also facilitating a good atmosphere in which then we can be able to really take advantage of some of the policies that they are proposing. Of course, I see punitive measures that have also been imposed by the taxman.
And one of them being that company is locked in a tax dispute with Kenya Revenue Authority to deposit half of the disputed tax in government coffers. How will that affect farms? Are they likely to face liquidity issues?
A lot, because if there's a tax dispute and it's gone to the tribunal and it has not been determined, the appeal has been rejected, and you need to appeal to higher jurisdiction like the Court of Appeal, then you are looking at a situation where you have to put aside 50% of the tax that is under contestation, and you are not very sure even how you are going to get that money. You are not very sure again whether you are going to succeed in terms of disputing that tax and getting your refund back. So it is quite a misnomer, and I see, yes, some countries have done that. Uganda are doing that, but their rate is a bit lower. But 50% is quite ambitious, and I see some of this being fought. There's also the drive to really focus on high net individuals in terms of ensuring that, again, I see the commissioner is proposing, the CS is proposing to put in additional measures to even get into PIN deregistrations for those people who are not paying taxes. So things are going to be very difficult. They are going to the extent of saying now we want to be allowed to go beyond the normal fixed assets like land. Now they are being allowed through this bill, if it passes, to be able to even attach movable assets like motor vehicles and other things that the taxman can use to easily recover taxation. So again, there are proposals also to just ensure that monies that are stuck with your customers are also going to be aggressively have to be paid to the taxman. It has been going on, but there are tough measures that are going to be implemented. So we see a very robust, aggressive taxman. So there's a need to just also, even for the businesses, to see that they're able to comply. I've also seen another initiative which is good in terms of the review of the unclaimed financial assets, where those organizations that are sitting on those assets are now being given leeway, if this bill passes, to be able to waive all the penalties and interest on those, including also even the fees for auditing those assets from an independent consultant. So I see the drive to also, that is a positive move. It's one that I can encourage. I hope the members can pass it quickly, because there are so much assets held by institutions, but the cost of compliance is becoming very difficult. And if that money is given to the unclaimed financial asset, then it means that the owners of those assets can then be able to be reunited with them very quickly, and they're able then to use them to just also finance their livelihood. So there are quite good measures also in this bill.
Yeah. On the tax dispute, do you think both parties, that is Kenya Revenue Authority and also the taxpayer, should contribute to this coffers, to the government coffers, this for 50%? Or rather, it's just the taxpayer? Because then again, if the case is in favor of the taxpayer, what happens then after?
Yeah, probably what they would say is to incentivize the taxpayer in terms of the foregone profits, not just the interest, because that money could have been used to make much bigger economic impact. So it's not just to pay like you are paying what I would put aside in a deposit-bearing account, but also to incentivize. So again, to have a middle ground, probably they would propose that. But again, I see they're also willing to finalize those disputes within quick time, so that again, the money is not tied into that account for unreasonably long time.
As we come to a close, maybe you can tell us, do you think the National Assembly is going to pass this finance bill in its current form? Are they going to have various changes that are going to be proposed?
I see them passing some, but not passing, because a lot of the changes that have been proposed here are basically, again, going to have to be implemented by the next government. So whoever wants to in government, they are vested interest, because they are going to also want to see, because it becomes then political. How is this going to affect the Mwananchi? We are faced with an election. So the members of parliament will be looking at it from a political angle. But again, they will be looking at if we pass these bills, how are they going to affect if we be the ones in government? So it's 50-50. I know there are those that will pass, especially those on VAT, they are good. Probably they need to really mirror on those that affect the customs and excise. We haven't talked about the issues of debt, which is huge, and also need to look at how they can also just ensure that those proposals within the bill. I've seen the CS is proposing to peg the borrowing on 55% of the GDP. We are only at 23, but we are straining. So that is again taking us into high debt. And we need to be able just to also watch over how that debt is going to affect us, especially that we also need to manage how we are using those funds from debt so that we are able then to have economic advantage by use of those borrowed funds.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Noah Ndakala, who is a managing partner for Ronald LLP, and we've been talking about the Finance Bill 2022. And thank you for joining us and for giving us your insights, and we'll invite you again. We'll continue with this conversation.